Alex, do you want to introduce yourself since I already somehow managed to butcher your name right off the bat?
No worries. Polish names can be hard to pronounce. Yeah, so I'm Alex Winnicki. I am from North Carolina. I'm currently finishing up the last week or two of my graduate degree in nutrition here at Lamar University in Southeast Texas. I grew up playing hockey. Played hockey for about 15 years. But once you get to about 19, 20, there's not a lot of hockey going on in North Carolina. So I fell out of the sport a bit, and I was working and eventually found cycling, and I was a lot better at cycling than I was at hockey. And there's a lot better riding than there is hockey in North Carolina. So I became a professional cyclist, and that really got me into nutrition, as I could see very clearly what nutrition could do for me in a 5-hour bike race. So I just became obsessed with all things nutrition, went back to school for it. And yeah, now I'm about 3 weeks away from moving to Chicago. I'm going to be working at Northwestern University as a sports dietitian as part of a fellowship program. So I'll be working up there with all the athletes at Northwestern.
Awesome. Well, to start off, we've obviously had the focus around the mental side of the game. And I wanted to hear your thoughts on how nutrition kind of ties to mental performance, mental health, and really just get an understanding of that.
Sure. So there's a couple things that come to mind when I hear that question. In the first, most like literal sense of nutrition and mental performance, you could think of an ergogenic aid, which is just like I take this supplement or this food and that yields an improved performance benefit for my sport, right? You could think of caffeine as probably the most widely consumed ergogenic aid, right? I take caffeine, I'm a little bit more hyper, I'm a little bit more active, and there's a little bit more of a cognitive focusing until a certain point. If you have too much coffee, then you can't quit jumping around and stuff, right? So in the most literal sense, you could think of nutrition in terms of that, but there's not a lot of benefit to that area. Like I said, there's caffeine, and then maybe, there's new research on, adaptogenic mushrooms, but this is kind of in the weeds, and the bulk of that conversation really comes down to nutrition not improving your mental health or mental performance, but maintaining it and allowing a foundation for you to build like a great athlete. I kind of think of, and all of, everyone here, between mental health, sleep, your physical condition, and then your diet, those are all pillars of health. And upon that, like those pillars lay the foundation. And if you want to build a strong athlete, if you have a gap in that game, the further along you go, the wider that gap gets. So when I hear nutrition and mental health, you can't eat 50 grams of carbohydrate and this timing, and like there's no formula I can give you to improve your mental health. But in the absence of a good diet and good nutrition, you will not achieve optimal mental performance. You will probably not achieve optimal health. That how you eat will affect you in a physical sense and in a mental sense. But there's no like secret recipe. Did not mean to make a pun there, but I did. So there's no real secret recipe to like achieve, enlightenment, but it's definitely a part of that foundation. And I think the last thing I kind of think about when you say that is not necessarily how can nutrition impact my mental health, but how can my mental health impact my nutrition? And this is where we see people using nutrition or a food as a coping mechanism, as an escape. It's a negative reinforcement of sorts, which is, I feel uncomfortable, I feel anxious. Maybe if I just snack on this, I can escape those feelings. That's what a negative reinforcer will do. And when people start using foods in that sense, your diet can start to trend in a bad way just because your mental health is maybe not necessarily balanced, if that makes sense. And that's where we kind of see disordered eating and eating disorders start to pop up. The further you go down that road of I'm using food as a coping mechanism for insecurities, stress, all of those things, you see a lot of that. Over the summer, I've worked at part of my graduate studies is going to hospitals, private practices. I see all of dietetics in the nutrition field, and you'll see a lot of just this, like that coping, or people that are going into bariatric surgery, people that are like 400 pounds. You see someone walking down the street that's, extremely large, and a lot of people think like, wow, like what a slob. And what a lot of people don't realize is their mental health has just absolutely deteriorated. And instead of going to some other vice, they have found food. And that's on the extreme end of things, but that's kind of like a reversal of that question, where the mental health is more impacting your diet and nutrition more so than the other way around.
Yeah, it's such an interesting thing, because it's more complex than just saying, oh, eat this food, it's going to make you feel this way. But yeah, you can start to, when you bring that awareness, you can start to notice how things are interrelated, and how that's the benefit of going to a nutritionist, is not just noticing like, hey, take this pill and you're going to magically feel better, but you can notice how those things all connect in such a deep way. That's awesome. So let's talk about kind of fueling your body and how that can lead to fueling your mind. So in a similar sense to what we just discussed, but talking more about using food as fuel, and how to start to learn how to balance your diet and eat just more healthy in general.
Yeah, whenever I hear someone trying to say like, all right, what should I do? Like, how can I just in the most practical sense of how do I fuel for my sport, and working with college athletes, it's for myself, it's a conversation I have all the time, where people are either really motivated and they're like, all right, like I'm ready to do this. Tell me what to do. You give me a plan and I'll do that plan. I got this. And instead I tell them, all right, well, instead of you giving up pizza and never having pizza again, like what you say you want to do, why don't you just have like one less slice of pizza? Why don't you have a little balance in your diet here? And I generally frame that in the context of the 80-20 rule. And some people might know that, like business majors will know it as like the Pareto principle, where 80% of your revenue comes from 20% of your customers. But in the context of nutrition, 80% of your diet should be fueling you for health, longevity, for, better cognitive performance, for better, on ice performance. Like you're dialed in, you're doing the right things, you're checking all the boxes. And we can get into that in a minute. And then the 20% of it is like, you know what, there's a boxing match on tonight and I'm going to Buffalo Wild Wings and I'm getting some wings, because that's what I do when there's a boxing match, and you have fun and you don't stress about it all the time. So when you talk about fueling just in general, that's a life approach. That's not just I'm going on a crash diet, I'm giving up all carbohydrates. That is, you could do 80-20 from here to whenever, and that's going to serve you fairly well. And in the context of how does that fuel your mind, I think it takes a lot of the stress and anxiety out of nutrition and dieting. Dieting is hard. Like counting calories is hard. Like being like, I'm going to meal prep and I'm gonna have the same thing every day for 2 weeks. Like, geez, that's like, I don't want to eat the same thing every day for two weeks. Like that's so mentally taxing. You have, because eventually you get to that point where like, I am now doing the thing I don't want to do every day for 5 times a day. And then like people wonder why the fad diet didn't work out, or like, man, I just fell off the wagon. Like, of course you did. Like you gave yourself an unachievable task. Like you're a person, 80-20. Like that's, if you can live by that, and if you can balance that out, then you're going to be able to have more mental bandwidth for other things like playing your hockey game, or just living your life. You don't have to fret over, all right, what's my next meal? Like, what did I have before? Like you've got those bases covered, and it's no longer something that is just actively occupying all of your mental space.
Right. Yeah. That is I think that's a great approach, and it could be extremely helpful for players, especially like myself, where yeah, I usually like to step all into things and
Mhm.
just push way too hard. And then, yeah, you can see how it's very easy to fall off the wagon when every single thing you do has to be measured out, count the calories, count the carbs. So, yeah, I totally get that. And like in transition with that, um, talking about carbs and let's say talking about how oftentimes we see certain things get kind of demonized in the nutrition area and for just normal athletes who don't know a ton about nutrition. So let's talk a little bit about carbs and the kind of how people might not understand that, hey, just let's go on a keto diet and get ripped, and how that can affect your performance very easily.
Yeah, there's so much to unpack in that space, from the body dysmorphia issues where people like, all right, I see myself in the mirror and I don't look like this guy or this girl on Instagram. And that leaves you, this is what marketing does, is it makes you feel like there's something missing. If you don't have our product, then you're not a complete person. And you see that on a very subversive level with, you should go on keto because look how cut I am. And it does not, a cut keto Instagram influencer does not equal healthy functional hockey player that's going to get into that D1 school, that's going to get into the NHL, that's going to play minor league hockey. These are two completely different things. And just from a holistic standpoint, not even like a performance one, just a basic understanding of protein, fat, and carbohydrate can serve you well in life and not just in the performance. So, like you'll hear protein is going to build muscles. You don't really know what fat does, but it's there. It plays a role in plenty of hormonal functions that actually are very beneficial for mental health. And then carbohydrates are going to be your main energy source, right? And so what that means for a hockey player is that when you are doing these fast bursts up and down the ice skating, I mean, what's the average shift time in the NHL now? Do you know?
Yeah, it's low. It's definitely somewhere around like 30 seconds, 45 seconds.
Yeah. So that's an extremely explosive effort, right? Like you're going all out, you're like stopping, starting, DXL. Like again, that is pure carbohydrates. And it's carbohydrates that you are consuming either in between periods, that's your pre-game meal, and that's also what you did a day or two ago. You have those carbohydrates are stored in your muscles, and your muscles use those first, especially for those explosive efforts. And so a basic understanding of that, I think, can help demystify a low carbohydrate diet or a ketogenic diet, especially in the context of this sport. You absolutely need carbohydrates days before, like up to your game, and then hopefully in between periods, like you could, that would be beneficial too. There's a kind of a continuum from, let's say you were just walking, right, going to an all-out sprint, and on that continuum from walking, you're predominantly burning fat. There's some carbohydrates being burned over there, but you have fat stores for days and weeks. That's how much, that's how efficient fat can be. And that's used for those, all right, I'm walking, maybe I'm like, fast paced walk, easy stuff. And as you go more towards that sprint, your body is no longer able to use that fat. And instead it's using carbohydrates, and then carbohydrates that are in your blood and in your muscles. So it shifts further and further away from fat and more towards that. And if in the absence of you having a carbohydrate sufficient diet, it will absolutely impede your performance, especially in an explosive sport. And there's plenty of research to back up the drop in VO2 with a ketogenic diet. And what that means is essentially how much oxygen you can use during an effort.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I'm glad you were able to bring that up. And yeah, it's obviously a very complex topic, but to have that basic understanding can be extremely important and allow people to not get caught up in the fad diets, especially as an athlete trying to perform at your best.
Yeah. To that point, I think in the same way, like, everyone on here is preached, have a team, have a support system of people that you can ask these things to. And instead of just going, like Kyle on Instagram said I should do this, but he doesn't know anything. Kyle is stupid. He doesn't know. He knows nothing. Please ask your strength coach, ask the dietitian, ask somebody. And again, like if you can't have those people physically around you, you can always find a good resource. Like you can find, like I think Jessica Isaacs is the head dietitian at UCLA. Like she's all over Instagram. Like people like that you could find that have RDN next to their name, have gone through the credentialed license process to speak about nutrition and know all things sports. If you shoot them a message, I would put money on it that they're probably going to respond or at least be able to point you in the right direction.
Right. That's awesome. Yeah, that's super helpful for just anybody who's looking to try to figure out nutrition or get some information. That'd be massive.
And similar to anyone watching this or to any of your clients or anyone who works with you, same applies to me. Like if I'm on, like Instagram is generally the platform I'm on. I've got free time every now and then. And like if someone, shoots me a message about nutrition, I'm more than happy to help in any way I can.
That's awesome. Well, in terms of, let's ask one of those questions, because I also find this very challenging sometimes. When it comes to meal planning, organization, and just managing a super busy lifestyle, which when players are trying to play a season, manage a social life, and then also doing well in school, what are some of the kind of core things you recommend players look at as in terms of resources or just strategies they should be using?
This is a great question and a great thing, especially for young adults to learn. And that, anyone, if you're, 16 to, in early 20s, this is something like you should really start thinking about is, all right, how do I procure food for myself and prepare it? Because the price you pay for McDonald's it's not necessarily the price of your money. It's the price of like your health, right? They're selling you convenience, not a healthy meal. That's their shtick. That's what they do. So if you don't look out for your health, no one will. To the people that say like, all right, I can't find time. Like I hear you, life is terribly busy, but I know you can do it. And even if it's not, cooking every single meal and meal prepping every single meal, doing what's the hardest meal for you to like not eat out? I think that's pick the hardest one that's hard for you to like, all right, I can just never find time to like make dinner. All right, but you have time to make like breakfast and lunch. Cool. All right. So if you want to meal prep like anything, pick the hardest one so that, you're getting the most bang for your buck, so to speak. If time is what you are short on, make it count the most. And to that, I would say, I love this quote. It's like, do what's hard while it's easy. So if Wednesday through Saturday are slam packed, you should be preparing Monday, Tuesday for that extent. Don't try to meal prep or cook for yourself on Thursday when that's right in the middle of the busiest time of your week. Do what's easy or do what's hard while it's easy. Personally for me, that is a Sunday. I'm usually busy doing stuff on Saturday, but Sunday evening, I'm winding down. I'm getting things packed up. I'm getting notes. All right, what do I have to do this following week? I'm looking ahead. And if you look ahead, you can kind of prepare and find where those sticking points. All right, I'm gone all day Wednesday. What am I going to eat? I don't know. Okay, well, maybe I'll freeze a dinner and I'll take it with me. And then, I'll be able to have at least that meal with me. And so if I have to eat out, at least it's not 3 times a day. Maybe it was just once or twice a day. And so picking and choosing your battles and preparing ahead are definitely skills to help with that. Now, when it comes to the actual skill of meal prepping and cooking and that, I would say you have an unlimited resource of the internet. There's YouTube, like baking, or no, it's Basics with Babish, I think. that's a great one. Epicurious has plenty of great things. Food and Wine. There's a million YouTube channels that are entertaining and fun that will walk you through cooking basics. And to that, I would say, pick a new dish each week. Pick a new cuisine. Maybe you would like, all right, you like Taiwanese food. Okay, well, Google it, look it up, try to come up with that new dish this week. Or maybe you just I love French cooking. It's super fun. So I always try to pick another French dish or a French dish and, or a different type of sauce or something. So just, pick something and try to learn a new skill each week. And if you're looking for motivation, a lot of times people they're all right, I don't really want to meal prep. I can usually hook people into saying I bet you would like to cook for your girlfriend or your boyfriend though. And to that, even if it's not necessarily I don't mind just eating a PB&J, I don't want to meal prep a healthy salad and some rice. I would say learning those culinary skills are not just for your performance, but it's also for beyond. These are tenets of life, not just hockey, not just a performance. And I promise you, your partner, spouse, significant other will greatly appreciate the effort.
Awesome. So, the final question I kind of wanted to ask and to finish off on was, in terms of kind of giving people actionable advice moving forward in terms of nutrition, if you could pick one core thing that people could take and apply this week, what would it be? And what would you kind of push people to really look into?
If I had to push someone to, it's tricky because I want to give people an actionable thing, but it's so very personal.
Mm-hmm.
I would probably put money on most athletes not eating breakfast, at least in their later teenage years and early 20s. For whatever reason, I could say probably 50% of the athletes that I work with don't eat breakfast. And to those who don't eat breakfast, very simple challenge of, if, in the morning, your liver glycogen is depleted, so your fuel tank is running on empty. And, the longer you prolong that refueling period, the closer you get to that practice or that game, the more compromised you're going to be in being topped off and ready to go. So the biggest thing I always try to advocate for athletes is try to find something for breakfast. Anything, something small. It could be just toast, peanut butter, and a banana. It could be a couple of eggs. Try to get something in, especially the older you get, and especially if you're not 17, 18, you're still growing and developing as a person. You need this fuel, and not to mention you're burning, 1,000+ calories a game. You should be eating consistently. Breakfast will help you do that. And if, like I said, about 50% of the athletes I end up working with kind of have that habit of skipping that meal. To the people that have that covered, and I guess to everyone, I would always challenge people to try to add a fruit or a vegetable to their plate at each meal. Sounds very basic. It sounds like it's literally the goal I find myself working out with athletes. And I've been in school for 6 years now for this. And it's kind of funny because of all the biochemistry that I've had to take. What a lot of times what it boils down to for people to live a more healthy, fulfilled life is have you had your fruits and vegetables today? 9% of Americans, and I don't know about Canada, it's probably better, but 9% of Americans eat the recommended amount of fruits and vegetables. So I'd probably put money on most of the athletes that we all work with, and probably some of us, I know I'm guilty some days, of not eating enough fruits and vegetables. So if you could have just one fruit or one vegetable, or maybe both, every meal, you're going to get closer to that goal. The recommendation is 3 to 4 fruits and 4 to 5 vegetables a day. And so if you can get, both at every meal, you're getting pretty close to that.
So, well, that sounds great. And yeah, I'll definitely continue to take advantage of that concept, or actually both of those concepts.